Hello, America! Let's talk about something that's been swirling around the internet faster than a conspiracy theory at a flat earthers convention. $1,800 stimulus checks in 2025. Is this a case of wishful thinking, or are we about to be rolling in government-issued dough once again? Well, hold on to your hats, folks, because the truth, as always, is a bit more complicated. The rumor mill has been working overtime, churning out claims of a new wave of stimulus checks hitting our bank accounts. Social media is ablaze with posts about eligibility criteria and payment dates. But before you start planning that extravagant vacation, or finally buying that solid gold statue of yourself, we all have dreams, people. We need to inject a dose of reality into this situation. The IRS, the folks responsible for actually sending out those sweet, sweet government checks, have made it abundantly clear. There are no plans for any new stimulus checks in 2025. That's right. The $1,800 stimulus check is about as real as a unicorn riding a dragon while juggling Bigfoot's tax returns. In other words, it's complete and utter hogwash. Don't believe everything you read on the internet, kids, especially if it involves the government suddenly deciding to give everyone free money. Now I know what you're thinking, but John, didn't we get stimulus checks before? What makes this time any different? And you'd be right. Remember those heady days of 2020 and 2021? The pandemic was raging, the economy was doing its best impression of a dumpster fire, and the government, in a rare moment of competence, decided to throw some money at the problem. Thus, the stimulus checks were born. 3 glorious rounds of direct payments to eligible Americans, designed to provide some financial relief during a time of unprecedented economic uncertainty. It was a lifeline for many, helping to cover bills, put food on the table, and maybe even buy a new pair of sweatpants for all that quality time we were spending at home. These weren't just random acts of government generosity, though. There was a method behind the madness. The stimulus checks were part of a larger economic strategy to stimulate, hence the name, consumer spending and prevent the economy from completely collapsing in on itself. And you know what? It kind of worked. The stimulus checks, along with other government interventions, helped to prevent a full-blown economic depression. They weren't a perfect solution, but they were a necessary stopgap during a time of crisis. The year is 2020. The world is in the throes of a global pandemic. Businesses are shuttered, unemployment is skyrocketing, governments faced an unprecedented challenge. The answer came in the form of stimulus packages. These included direct payments to citizens. The logic was straightforward. When people have money, they spend it. This spending supports businesses and preserves jobs. Stimulus checks propped up demand during the economic shock. Their effectiveness is still debated among economists, but they undeniably shaped the economic landscape during the pandemic. Section 4. The end of an era. Why were stimulus checks discontinued? As the pandemic began to recede and the economy showed signs of recovery, the rationale for continuing stimulus checks began to wane. The initial shock of the pandemic had passed, businesses were reopening, and people were returning to work. The economy, while still fragile, was no longer in a state of freefall. Moreover, the massive government spending required to fund the stimulus checks was starting to raise concerns about inflation and the national debt. Printing money and sending it out to people, while effective in the short term, is not a sustainable long-term economic strategy. In light of these factors, the government made the decision to discontinue the stimulus check program. The last round of payments was issued in early 2021, marking the end of an era. While some argued that the checks should have continued for longer, particularly for those still struggling to make ends meet, the government ultimately decided that the time had come to wean the economy off of this extraordinary form of support. Section 5. COLA Conundrum, a drop in the bucket of rising expenses. Now let's fast forward to the present day. The economy is in a different place than it was during the height of the pandemic, but we're far from out of the woods. Inflation is still a major concern, eroding the purchasing power of our hard-earned dollars. The cost of everything from groceries to gas to housing seems to be on an unstoppable upward trajectory. In an attempt to offset the impact of inflation, the government announced a cost of living adjustment, or COLA, increase for Social Security beneficiaries. This means that folks receiving Social Security, SSI, SSDI, and VA benefits will see a slight bump in their monthly checks. But here's the catch. The COLA increase, while welcome, is simply not enough to keep pace with the rising cost of living. It's like trying to put out a wildfire with a squirt gun. The increase is a step in the right direction, but it's a small step on a long road to economic recovery. Section 6, Myth-busting time, debunking false eligibility criteria. Now, let's address the elephant in the room, or rather, the misinformation elephant in the internet chat room. As with any rumor of free money, the $1,800 stimulus check myth has spawned a whole cottage industry of false eligibility criteria. You'll find websites and social media posts claiming that you need to meet certain income requirements, have children, or sacrifice your firstborn to qualify for this imaginary windfall. Don't buy it. These are nothing more than attempts to lure you in with clickbait headlines and false promises. Remember, there is no application process for a stimulus check that doesn't exist. The IRS is not sending out forms, and you certainly shouldn't be giving your personal information to any website claiming to be affiliated with the government. When it comes to government programs, always rely on official sources like the IRS website or reputable news outlets. Section 7, stay informed, stay alert, your guide to accurate information. So, there you have it, folks. The $1,800 stimulus check is a myth, a figment of the internet's collective imagination. It's time to put this rumor to bed and focus on what's real. The economy is still recovering, and many people are struggling to make ends meet. While there may not be any magical stimulus checks on the horizon, there are resources available to help. Don't be afraid to reach out to local charities, food banks, or government assistance programs if you need help. And remember, when it comes to information, especially about something as important as your finances, always be skeptical. Double-check your sources, rely on reputable news outlets, and don't believe everything you read on the internet. Stay informed, stay alert, and don't let the misinformation merchants get the best of you. That's all the time we have for tonight. Good night.